ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So with these words, I welcome you all to our Saturday morning session. And first of all, before I start, I would like to clarify that you will pardon me if I do blunders and mistakes. I am not an expert on Bhagavad Gita, nor I am an expert in Sanskrit. So whatever understanding I have, I will share with all of you. Some of you may agree, may not agree, and I will be willing to learn from all of you. So please excuse me if I do any mistake. I don't claim to have any expertise either in Bhagavad Gita or in Sanskrit language. So with these words, now let us start chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita today. Chapter 1 is very special chapter because in this chapter, Sri Krishna does not say even a single word. There is not a single word by him in the entire chapter. First 19 verses are primarily confined to the discussion by Duryodhana about the various great warriors who are present on both sides in the war. So it's a very different context, but we need to understand that context. And we'll start with verse number 1 first of all. Om Sri Paramatmane Namah. अथ प्रथमो अध्याय धृतराष्ट्र उवाच. The first verse we will read. धर्म क्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे संवेता युतुत्सवे मामका पांडवाश्च किम कुर्वत संजय. Now this is important because if you look at this verse, the first verse of Bhagavad Gita starts by the blind king. Dhritarashtra is the one who initiates this process. It is not only important because we are all blind in certain ways and we all have curiosity to learn. So the blind king who was so much attached to Duryodhana wants to know what is happening in the war. And he is describing that इस धर्म क्षेत्र में जो कुरुक्षेत्र का धर्म क्षेत्र है उसमें ये सब लोग इकट्ठे हुए हैं, पांडव और मेरे पुत्र, वो क्या कर रहे हैं. तो उस exactly at the same time he is also calling it धर्म क्षेत्र. अब धर्म क्षेत्र में अगर युद्ध होता है तो फिर वो धर्म क्षेत्र रह नहीं जाता, वो तो युद्ध क्षेत्र ही बन जाता है. और युद्ध जो है वो धर्म पे चाहे आधारित हो, लेकिन युद्ध तो युद्ध ही होता है. तो ये जो पहला जो श्लोक है भगवत गीता का, ये धृतराष्ट्र जो अंधा व्यक्ति है, अंधा राजा है, उसके मुंह से निकला हुआ शब्द है. और ये संजय से पूछ रहा है कि मेरे को बताइए कि मेरे पुत्र और पांडु के पुत्र युद्ध में क्या कर रहे हैं. We already discussed in our earlier talk that Sanjay was endowed with special powers to watch and also to listen to the conversation on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And then he was narrating it to Dhritarashtra. Now, there are many questions raised about this power, but today it is quite possible. We have seen the technology today, how it can work. I'm sure there was some sort of special technology at that time too, which was used to provide this special ability to Sanjay to watch and listen to all the conversations happening in the battlefield. So, of course, in Mahabharata, it is said that this power was given to him by Vedvyas. But whatever may be the fact is that he had this special power which enabled him to watch and to describe the entire sequence of events taking place there. उसके बाद 19 वर्सेज हैं, वर्ष नंबर 2 से वर्ष नंबर 20 तक. इन वर्सेज में बेसिकली दुर्योधन जो है वो दोनों तरफ के सेनाओं के जो महारथी हैं, जो बड़े बड़े योद्धा हैं, उनको इंट्रोड्यूस कर रहा है. वो अपने गुरु द्रोणाचार्य से बात कर रहा है और ही इज एक्सप्लेनिंग टू द्रोणाचार्य that who are the great warriors on the side of Pandavas and who are the great warriors on our side. Now here one thing is very significant, that Duryodhana was not a person who was, feeling inferior. And that is why he started to describe the whole scene and the various warriors from the Pandu's side. The great warriors from Pandava side were described first, and the warriors from his own side were described later and in a shorter way. So it signifies that Duryodhana was brave and he wanted to assess properly the great warriors on the Pandava side, and also wanted to say good words about their bravery. So this is what the verse number 2 to verse number 19, they continue like that. I think we don't have to go into these verses in detail, but this is the description entirely between Duryodhan and Dronacharya. Here there are two things which are important. One is that he has said that we have to protect Bhisma Pitama because he is a great warrior and he is the one who is safeguarding our army, who is the head of our army, and therefore we have to protect him from all sides. That was his primary instruction at this stage. And there was nothing very specific. And then they talk about, this was Sankhnad. They used to have this special sound of the Sankh in all the important events. Of course, the war included, but also otherwise other important events used to start with Sankhnad. So this was the tradition at that time. This sound was considered like, these days we have what we call the master of ceremonies come on the stage and announces the commencement of the ceremony. Similarly, in those days, the Sankhnad was the commencement of a particular event. So then they talk about all these people who use their Sankh to make that sound in the field of war. Now there's one question which is also raised, and I think I would like to address that first before we go into the dilemma of Arjun. This question has been raised that when both the armies are, facing each other in the battlefield, and such large armies are, standing on both sides, how come this long conversation of 700 verses took place between Sri Krishna and Arjun? Now, to me, it doesn't look very awkward. I was thinking on this issue, and even a person like me who doesn't know much of Sanskrit can actually speak one verse in about 4 to 5 seconds. It doesn't take more than 4 to 5 seconds to speak one verse of Bhagavad Gita. So out of 700 verses, actually you reduce 20 verses, so it is only 680 verses, which are the actual conversation between uh, Sri Krishna and Arjun. So I calculated the total time is less than 1 hour. And maybe those people who use Sanskrit as language of daily conversation could do it even faster. So maybe they spent not more than 40 to 45 minutes on the entire conversation between the two. And since Duryodhan was actually thinking that Arjuna is thinking to surrender, so he thought, why not give them little time, let them think about it, and let them surrender if they want to surrender. So I have that perception on Bhagavad Gita. Some people have been raising this question that how come such a long conversation happened between the two. It appears long because we do not know Sanskrit, we do not understand the meaning of the words properly. But those people who had higher level of intellect, those people, for them Sanskrit was a language of daily conversation. I think for them it would not have taken more than 40 to 45 minutes at the speed we talk today. And if they talked even faster, then obviously it would be even lesser time. So I do not, consider it odd that this happened. And particularly looking at the mentality of Duryodhan, who was already, happy that Arjuna is, trying to reconsider the entire process and he might surrender. So he must have given this time, uh, in the middle of the battlefield. That is my perception, but some people believe that this conversation was incorporated into Mahabharata separately. It happened elsewhere and it was recorded or it was, uh, said by Sanjay, and then this conversation was incorporated separately. But I do not believe that. Of course, Sanjay was telling everything to Dhritarashtra, but I think this conversation happened in the middle of the battlefield. It's not a very long conversation by even today's standards. In those times, it must have been even smaller. So that is my perception on that. Now, we will start from verse number 22 onwards. Now, in verse number 22 onwards, Arjuna is the only one who is speaking. And Sri Krishna is listening to him very attentively. He did not intervene at all, not a single word from his side. So, first of all, Arjuna is telling, let us take verse number 23. दुर्बुद्धि दुर्योधन का युद्ध में कल्याण चाहने वाले जो जो ये राजा लोग इस सेना में आए हैं उन युद्ध करने वालों को मैं देखूंगा. Arjuna said to Krishna that I want to see all those warriors who are supporting the evil force led by Duryodhana in this war. So this was the context in which he asked Sri Krishna to take his chariot in the middle of the two forces. That is where he started. And then we come to verse number 28 onwards. Because in the remaining verses, the Arjuna basically stands in the middle of the battlefield with Sri Krishna, and he is inspecting the side of Kauravas, in which obviously he finds Acharya, Pitamaya, brothers, all those great, relatives and great people with whom he worked, he found them, particularly his guru Dronacharya, his Pitamaha Bhisma, and his cousins, and of course all the other relatives who were present there. And then he gets what we call Visad, Arjun Vishad Yoga. That is what the chapter has been named. So he is telling, and this is very interesting. We have to see this conversation, what he's saying in his, because this is the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. This is where uh, Sri Krishna will tell what he needs to tell to Arjun. So, verse number 28, हे कृष्ण, इस युद्ध की इच्छा वाले खड़े हुए स्वजन समुदाय को देखकर मेरे अंग शिथिल हुए जाते हैं और मेरा मुख भी सूखा जाता है और मेरे शरीर में कंप तथा रोमांच होता है. Now he is feeling completely terrified and he is feeling absolutely scared. If you go back in time, when the incident of Draupadi happened after the gambling between the two sides, each one of the 5 brothers of Pandavas were challenging Kauravas for a war that we will. In fact, they wanted to take their life. And then during the 13-year exile which followed that gambling, during that period, Arjun went to Swarg to acquire all the great weapons from Indra. He went to spend there 1 year and he learnt all the weapon systems which are present in Swarg, and he got all those technologies with him. At the same time, the other brothers were also preparing themselves for the war. They knew that Yudhishthira will not surrender the half of their kingdom even after 13 years in exile. So they were all set for the war and they were absolutely feeling humiliated after what happened to Draupadi in the court of Dhritarashtra. So despite that, all of a sudden, after looking at the close relatives of himself, Arjuna was in a total dismay. He was absolutely perplexed, and that is why he says, मेरा मुख सूखा जाता है, मेरे शरीर में कंप और रोमांच हो रहा है. He is feeling absolutely shaken after looking at the war. So this is the context. We have to look at the two contexts. On the one hand, he was so keen to fight a war against Duryodhana and his evil forces, to take revenge of a lot of events which happened in the past. At the same time, after looking at the great warriors, including Bhisma and Drona, he was completely shaken. Now, in this context, it is important to know that when, for example, in today's world, if you actually fire weapon from a distance and people die, say about a kilometer or 5 kilometers away or 10 kilometers away, you do not actually see the people who are fighting the war. You do not have that human contact which comes in a war like Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata war, you see all those people around you, and you all of a sudden you get a feeling that if they are killed, what will happen to their families? So that human contact which is there in Mahabharata war, to some extent that is not there in today's wars. In today's wars are very anonymous, and particularly the wars with missiles and nuclear weapons are totally anonymous. You press a button here and a missile goes somewhere else and kills 500 people or 1,000 people. Now you don't see those individuals, and therefore your emotions are not touched. You are uh, not impacted by the presence of those people. But if you have to fire on the people who are people present in front of you, 100,000 people, and you have to fire on them, then your emotions will be touched. You will be completely in a situation of perplex. So that is what is happening to Arjun here. He is in a situation of a dilemma. So that is where he begins. In the next verse, he says, हाथ से गांडीव धनुष गिरता है, त्वचा भी बहुत जलती है, मेरा मन भ्रमित सा हो रहा है और मैं खड़ा रहने में समर्थ नहीं हूं. So he is describing his own state of internal emotions which are passing in his system, in his mind. Then this is very important here, the verse number 31. हे केशव, लक्षणों को भी मैं विपरीत देखता हूं तथा युद्ध में अपने कुल को मारकर कल्याण भी नहीं देखता. Now, लक्षणों को भी विपरीत देखता हूं means he is not 100% sure that he is going to win the war. So he also has that suspicion in his mind कि whether we will win or not. Because after all, on the side of Pandavas, the size of the army is comparatively very small. It's only 2/3 that of Kauravas. There are 7, we can call them battalions on their side and 11 battalions on the other side. So the size is less. So that is another doubt he has in his mind, whether we will win the war and all our family members will be killed, and even then we may not win the war. So that is a doubt he has in mind. And then he tries to rationalize this. This is what happens when we all do. For example, you lose a particular battle in your organization. You wanted to do certain changes and you lose that battle. Then after losing the battle, then you rationalize that, oh, it was all right because, this will give this new, thinking to the people, this new ideas and all those. So you want to rationalize the defeat by describing the good of not changing what you wanted to change. This is what he is now coming to in the verse number 32. मैं विजय नहीं चाहता और राज्य और सुखों को भी नहीं चाहता. हे गोविंद, हमें राज्य से क्या प्रयोजन अथवा भोगों से और जीवन से भी क्या प्रयोजन है. Now he is appearing very philosophical and very liberal. He says we have nothing much to gain, nothing to do about. What will we do with the big kingdom? This is what is the description of a सांसारिक person. संसार में हर आदमी ऐसा ही कहता है. जब he is not in a position to fight a battle, then he says हमें क्या करना है, कोई फायदा नहीं है, इतने लोग मरेंगे, इतने लोगों को फैमिलियां बर्बाद होंगी, हम इसमें क्यों जाएं. It is actually depicting his importance, but he is trying to rationalize that. And that is what we do. All of us do this every single day. When we are not able to fight a battle against the evil outside, we just rationalize it. I do myself, I know many times when I want to see that something wrong is happening and I want to fight against it, but I feel no, I will not be able to fight, and then I try to rationalize it. कि नहीं, अब कोई फायदा नहीं है, संसार चल रहा है, ऐसे ही चलने दो. Why should we take this on our own self? So this is what he's saying here. He's trying to rationalize what you call the lack of courage which he is losing in the beginning of the war. So after that he says, क्योंकि हमें जिनके लिए राज्य भोग और सुख आदि इच्छित हैं, वे लोग जीवन की आशा को त्याग के यहाँ युद्ध में खड़े हैं. If those people who are for whom we are, trying to win this battle and trying to win this kingdom, those people are standing in this war against us, so why should we get into this battle at all? So he is getting into an argument within his mind that this is not the correct thing to do. under these circumstances. Partly it is driven by his what you call lack of courage, partly driven by moh, that is, he sees his family members, his teacher, his pitamah, everybody he is able to see there, and therefore he gets completely deluded because of their presence. And then he's talking about, you know, something very, very, we all talk about those things. We say that these are the great principles of life. We should not do this. So he says that इसलिए हे मधुसूदन, मुझे मारने पर भी अथवा 3 लोगों के राज्य के लिए भी मैं इन सबको मारना नहीं चाहता, फिर पृथ्वी के लिए तो कहना ही क्या. So see, he is rationalizing his behavior now. We all do that. That मेरे को इन सब चीजों से क्या प्रयोजन है. मैं तो I can go and live like a monk in the forest. I don't need this big kingdom, and why should I kill all these people for the kingdom of this earth? I don't even do that, even for if I get the kingdom of all the 3 lokas, which is, we used to call them the Swarg Lok, the Prithvi Lok, and the Patal Lok. So all the 3 lokas, even if I get all the 3 of them, I don't want that by, after killing all my near and dear in the family. So he's trying to rationalize that. And he's talking like a great philosopher, as we all do in our daily life. And then हे जनार्दन, धृतराष्ट्र के पुत्रों को मारकर भी हमें क्या प्रसन्नता होगी. इन आताताइयों को मारकर हमें पाप ही लगेगा. Then he is also saying कि इनको मारने से तो we will be sinners, we are doing something wrong and we will be punished for that. So this is what he is continuing to rationalize this process. So this rationalization is very important to understand. And he thought that what he's saying is of great value, because this is an idea which very liberal minded people talk in today's world. Why should we fight? For example, if you want to punish terrorist organizations for example, in Pakistan. Now, if you are not able to do that, then you rationalize, why should we do the bombing? Why should we kill those people? Some innocent civilians will also be killed. And since you are not able to do that, you try to rationalize all that process. And that is what he is doing here, that what we will gain out of killing of all those people. So that is happening in the real world as well. If you go to the history of any single war in the world, you will find a similar thinking on both sides. It is not only one-sided, it happens on both sides. Then he is saying that, हे माधव, अपने बांधव धृतराष्ट्र के पुत्रों को मारने के लिए हम योग्य नहीं हैं, क्योंकि अपने कुटुंब को मारकर हम सुखी कैसे रहेंगे. So he is all talking about that what we are doing in this war is all wrong. We should not do it. While the same person was preparing for the war for the last 13 years, since the incident of Draupadi after the game of gambling, when they were in exile for 13 years, they were all preparing for the war. And now all of a sudden he is telling that this is all wrong, we should not do that, as if he is not even a party to putting the forces together and coming to the battlefield. फिर he even goes further down. यद्यपि लोभ से भ्रष्ट चित्त हुए ये लोग कुल के नाशकृत को दोष और मित्रों के साथ विरोध करने में पाप को नहीं देखते. Now he is putting the blame on the other side. The other side is not looking at the sins they are going to commit in this war. And let's forget about these people, because they are ignorant. That's what he's saying basically, that they are ignorant. They don't know what they are doing. So we should not kill such people who are ignorant, who don't understand the complexity of the war. And they are ready to kill us, but we don't want to kill those people. परंतु हे जनार्दन, कुल के नाश करने से होते हुए दोष को जानने वाले हम लोगों को इस पाप से हटने के लिए क्यों नहीं विचार करना चाहिए कि जब when the whole family and the the near dears will be killed, then the sin which happened, those, the word those, or the fault or sin, whatever happens, we should consider that as wise people. He thinks that he's wise, and Krishna is very attentively listening to him. So he thought Krishna will also support the whole argument he's giving. So he's giving argument like a pandit, like a very well-read what you call Brahman, the person who knows all the shastras. So he's using all those great arguments to justify his action. And these arguments are not without logic. You see, if you think if the Sri Krishna had not gone on the other side, and he would have not delivered this entire sermon of Gita, these arguments look somewhat very strong. In our daily life, we use all these arguments. क्योंकि कुल के नाश होने से सनातन कुल धर्म नष्ट हो जाते हैं, और धर्म के नाश होने से संपूर्ण कुल को पाप दबा लेता है. Now he is going into very philosophical, detailed depth, that okay, if the family is destroyed, then basically we will not be able to look after our pitras, and we will not be able to perform our duties to our ancestors, and there would be a lot of evil forces which will grow into the family, and therefore in the next verse he says that the ladies of the family will go into the wrong path. उनकी वो दूषित हो जाएंगी, because they will not find men of their own family, and therefore they will have to go with other men, and therefore they will behave in a very unwanted fashion, and that would lead to the birth of one Shankar. That will lead to the birth of, now this one Shankar here, Arjuna has used it in a very derogative sense, in a very pejorative sense, that this is something very negative. So this is what he's explaining, that all the ladies of our family will also face a disaster, because all the men will be destroyed in the war, and these ladies will have to go with other men, and then the one Shankar, the progeny that will be born will be from different sect of people coming from different places and different families. So this is what he's saying here. He's explaining that. और वह वन शंकर कुल घातियों को और कुल को नरक में ले जाने के लिए होता है. लोप हुई पिंड तथा जल की क्रिया वाले इनके पितर लोक भी गिर जाते हैं. So he is explaining his own thought as like a pandit, that this is what is going to happen if we participate in this war. This war is disastrous. Firstly, all our family will be destroyed. Secondly, once the family is destroyed, then the ladies will be they will be corrupted, and with the corruption of the ladies, then the progeny which will be born, that will be worse, and that will destroy all our ancestral fame and ancestral heritage. So this is what he is talking about in a very profound philosophical way. That is what he thought that time. और इन वन शंकर कारक दोषों से कुल घातियों को सनातन कुल धर्म और जाति धर्म नष्ट हो जाते हैं. So he is expounding on that because of this cross breeding, the new progeny which will come, the whole dharma of our family and progeny will be destroyed. So why should we get into this? तो लास्ट में what he is saying that तथा हे जनार्दन, नष्ट हुए कुल धर्म वाले मनुष्य का अंततः काल तक नरक में वास होता है. हमने ऐसा सुना है that he ultimately leads into a very very great hell, he finally leads there. So he in this entire, about 22 verses, 22 to 44, the 22 verses, Arjuna is expounding on a few things which are very clear. Firstly, he get terrified after seeing the other side, particularly after seeing the Bhishma Pitamaha and Dronacharya, and of course the great warriors as well as the members of the family. That is one thing. Secondly, he got little terrified that he was not certain whether the war can be won against these kind of great warriors. For all the time, he was very certain that he can win war against all of them. But this time, he was not so much certain that how he will win the war. So there was uncertainty of winning the war. Then he rationalizes, saying that why should we desire to have this, kingdom and the whole of earth just by, you know, to have just to enjoy these fruits by killing so many of our own people. So he's talking about those killings, and then he's coming down that the ladies of the family will also be polluted, and the progeny will be polluted, and then the whole dynasty will be polluted, and we will be sent to hell because of this all the bad karmas which we'll end up doing in this war. So this is what Arjuna is talking, and he is talking in a very profound philosophical way. He is not talking like an innocent person, because till now he doesn't know that Sri Krishna is also the incarnation of the God. He doesn't know all that, and he doesn't know till for quite some time. So he's talking like a great, profound Brahmana, though he's Kshatriya, but he's great, profound Brahmana. He talks like a Pandit. He has all the knowledge that what will happen if we continue in this war. It is a destructive thing. It is not good for us. We will be sinners and we will be sent to the hell. This is what he says. अहो शोक है कि बुद्धिमान होकर भी हम बुद्धिमान होकर भी think that he is the great wisdom. He has all the wisdom of the world. बुद्धिमान होकर भी महान पाप करने के लिए तैयार हुए और राज्य और सुख के भोग लोभ से अपने कुल को मारने में उद्यत हैं कि people, wise people like us, who are ready to kill our own progeny, our own family, our own relatives, just for the sake of kingdom, just for the benefits of the kingdom. We should not do this. This is not a wise thing to do. This is what he says. And then finally he says that I throw away all my weapons, even if they kill me without any weapon, I don't mind, and that would be great for me. So this is what said. मुझे शस्त्र रहित न सामना करने वालों को शस्त्रधारी धृतराष्ट्र के पुत्र रण में मारें और वह मारना भी मेरे लिए अति कल्याणकारक होगा. That is what he's saying, that even if they kill me without any weapons, I don't have any weapons, I am nishastra, I am standing here without any weapons, and if they kill me like this, I don't care, I will be sent to the heaven because of that. So this is what he says. And after saying all that, Sanjay says to Dhritarashtra that रणभूमि में शोक से उद्विग्न मन वाले अर्जुन इस प्रकार कहकर बाण सहित धनुष को त्याग कर रथ के पिछले भाग में बैठ गए. So he is now completely given up the idea of war. He has told all his philosophy to Sri Krishna that this is not something good we should do, and we should completely leave it and leave this battlefield, and we should not engage into any killings. So this is very important to understand, that in this context the Gita has been told. The Gita, in this chapter, Sri Krishna doesn't say a single word. He just listens. He follows the instructions of Arjun. He is only a charioteer in that sense. He just commanding the chariot of Arjun. He is not a commander in himself. He is not a participant in the war also. that he promised he had already given, that he will not take weapons and he will not participate in the war. So he just following the instructions of Arjun, listening to him very carefully, and then in the second chapter he will tell things what he needs to tell. So the real, the message of Lord Krishna starts actually from verse number 11 in chapter 2. In the first part, he doesn't deal with the spiritual issues. He deals in the worldly manner, in the same worldly manner in which Arjuna has told his, dilemma now he's facing. Whether we call it dilemma or whether it's very clear, it appears in the second, later section of the verses. It's very clear that he doesn't want to fight because this is a path to hell. Everything is wrong what we are going to do. It will lead to one wrong to another and the next, and ultimately we will be all in the hell. So he's not even in a dilemma in that sense. He's almost certain that he will not fight this war, and he feels that he will be able to convince Krishna with his very scholarly arguments that this is not good for us. So this is where we will stop today. And this chapter, as we say, it is called Arjun Vishad Yog. Now, this is also a question which has been raised, that how Yog can be Vishad, and Vishad and Yog, how they can go together. Because Yoga has nothing to do with Vishad. Actually, Yoga is the cure for all Vishad. So here, the word Yog is a very, it has, it originates from Yuj Dhatu in Sanskrit, but it has different meanings. The profound meaning of yoga is basically to get united. That is the meaning. But get united, one can also get united with Vishad. One can also get united with dilemma sometimes. So this is what here Vishad Yoga means, that Arjuna is getting united with his own dilemma, with his own thinking on this issue. He feels that what we are going to do is all wrong, and that is what shows his the unity of his thoughts. In the later section of these verses, there is a clear unity of his thought that what we are going to do is wrong, and that is why it is Vishad Yoga. But it does not mean that yoga cannot be Vishad. Yoga generally is considered a positive thing, but it can also be, if you get united with some evil forces, then that is also a yoga in the linguistic sense. It is not yoga in the spiritual sense, but it is yoga in linguistic sense when you get united with some evil forces also. So here he is getting united with the dilemma and the fears and his the philosophical thoughts which he is having in his mind. So that is why it is called Arjun Vishad Yoga. So in this first chapter, the whole what we call the background or the paripeksh of the Bhagavad Gita starts. The Bhagavad Gita starts in this background, and this is very important to understand. The background is very clear. The two forces are facing each other. The war, sirens have already been sounded, and Arjuna in the middle of the battlefield, looking at all the forces on both sides. He's looking at his, teachers and relatives and brothers and cousins and all those people with whom he has grown up during his childhood and later on. And then he gets into this dilemma that why should we get into this business? Though he was preparing for the war for the last 13 years, and he even acquired, what we call a Divya weapon, the very, strong weapon systems from different parts of the world, and he equipped himself to be ready for the war. But at the last moment, he comes into this big dilemma, and he feels that the right decision would be to get out of this war. And even if he is killed without any weapons, without any participation in the war, that would be better for him. So this is what the context is today. And then we will take the, as we proceed further in chapter second, I think that things will become very profound. And there we will have to get into each and every verse very in a great detail. So we will take longer time on other chapters, but today I have skipped most of the verses because except the verses which are told by Arjun in 22 verses, his dilemma, except those, others were not directly relevant to the spiritual message which Krishna will be delivering from chapter 2 onwards. So thank you very much. This is what I thought we will cover today, the chapter 1, in certain way to understand the context of the entire Bhagavad Gita. And you will see in the chapter 2 also, the first two verses with Krishna says are very different than the rest of the verses that will follow after verse number 11. So thank you very much. Thank you.